So let me dive right in and tell you why I do what I do as president of the OAC. These are my two beautiful children. They're both on the spectrum at two very different places, and I wouldn't change them for the world. They've taught me a whole new way to see the world. They have turned me from a conservative to a new Democrat, and you can ask me about that later. It's complicated. And as Denise said, they have hands down made me a better teacher. The OAC is unique in many ways. Unlike some of the other autism groups that you may have heard of, we are not a registered charity, we're a not-for-profit, and that's because 100% of what we do is direct political action. So the other organizations do great work, and I know some of you support them in your schools, and that's great, but we play bad cop to their good cop. That's kind of our thing. So the other thing that we do is we kind of punch way above our weight. A lot of people think that we're much bigger than we are. We have no office. We have no paid staff, unless we have like a room in my house, and that's about it. But what we do have is a very clear mission, and that is to bring evidence-based, accessible, ethical, publicly funded services to individuals with autism and their family. Now, I don't do this work alone. I have an incredible team behind me, an executive team and a board of directors. And one of the things that I'm really proud of with our board of directors is that we have 2 autistic members on our board. And I'm not sure that any other organizations out there say that. And we learn so much from them as adults on the spectrum. So, how did we get here? Well, like all good advocacy groups, we were formed not in a kitchen, but in a cafeteria by a handful of people in response to something that happened. Dalton McGuinty had promised in the 2003 election campaign to end the practice of cutting kids off from autism therapy at the age of 6. And when we found out that, in fact, he was going to do the opposite of that and was going to take our families to court and fight them, we saw red. I'm seeing a lot of red now. Funny. So we went to work on the 4 goals that you see listed there. We organized small local protests in various communities, and we began to understand how to leverage local media. We also started to learn how to persuade MPPs to listen to us. Now, between 2005 and 2011, we organized over 24 rallies across the province, including this one that you see here outside McGuinty's office in Ottawa. During the Q&A, ask me about the wooden cutout of McGuinty with the broom handle through the nose that we called McGuinty-O. It drove the Liberals crazy, and there's a great story behind it, but it worked. And we succeeded eventually in fighting down the age 6 cutoff, not in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion. And then between 2011 and 2015, we kind of went quiet, not because we had achieved our goals, but because those of us that founded the organization all had kids that were entering adolescence, and autism and puberty is sort of a fantastic combination, and some of us went into crisis. But then in 2016, Kathleen Wynne introduced more funding for autism, which was great, but also now an age 5 cutoff, and we sort of went, did you think we wouldn't notice that? And we sprung back into action. This time, though, we were able to leverage new technology, such as Facebook and Twitter, and mobilize our members much more quickly. We organized a province-wide day of action outside MPP offices across the province. We had 2 large rallies, including this one outside Queen's Park. And our advocacy was incredibly successful. 92 days after the age 5 cutoff was announced, they walked back, and we celebrated just a fantastic victory. Now that many positive changes had happened to the Ontario Autism Program for children, we set our sights on some new goals, including schools and adult services, because the funny thing about kids with autism is they have this remarkable tendency to grow up into adults with autism and students with autism. So we launched our education campaign by issuing a huge report in 2017 filled with recommendations about how to improve outcomes for students on the autism spectrum, and I'd be happy to talk about that later. We were just starting to make progress on that when an election happened and a new announcement was made by Lisa MacLeod. Now, The thing that I haven't told you fully about is that I learned my political skills as a member of the PC Youth Association of Ontario. You can have a moment to be creeped out by that. I'll give you that moment. It creeps me out now. I met my husband on a leadership campaign. We both spent time working for Conservative cabinet ministers, me in Ottawa federally and him as chief of staff to a cabinet minister provincially. But autism changed everything for us politically. And that's a whole other conversation. But we learned that we had these political skills and we had to apply them to advocate for our children. And fighting against the Liberals, I suppose, was easy for a while. And then when the Conservatives got elected, we were like, okay, like I wasn't happy. At this point, I didn't identify as Conservative at all anymore. Yeah, I sort of feel like this is my political coming out party. It's really embarrassing, and I'm kind of awkward about it, and I hope you don't judge me too much, but that was who I was, and this is who I am now. But we sensed an opportunity. The minister assigned to the file was Lisa MacLeod, and we knew her. She had stood with us at protests in 2016. And not only that, we had 3 Conservative MPPs who were elected who had a direct family connection to autism, children and a brother. And so my husband was like, okay, let's try. And he went back inside. And he went to work for one of those MPPs. And we thought that maybe, and this was naive on our part, that he'd be able to offer his expertise and some kind of progress could be made. Well, we could not have been more wrong. What happened instead was a complete and utter betrayal. Bruce couldn't get anywhere near the autism file, and it soon became clear why. 9 months ago this week, MacLeod announced a new autism program that did everything that we had told them not to do when we briefed them. Instead of responding to individual needs, the new program offered a flat rate of funding that gave everyone on the wait list the same amount of funding, regardless of need, and that support dropped when a kid had a 6th birthday. We were back to age cutoffs. No one was getting enough funding to meet the needs of a severely affected kid, and if families earned anything more than poverty-level wages, then their funding was cut back. There was an age cap, there was a lifetime funding cap, income testing, and subclinical funding. It was an absolute disaster. So my husband, the founding president of the OAC, quit his job. And he's here today. On principle. And although it's had a terrible effect on our family income, he was unapologetic. The day of the announcement, he began disrupting the Conservative communication strategy. He went on Power and Politics, and he said, I simply could not stay and defend the indefensible. His departure quickly became the story, and we began messing, as I said, with their communication strategy. Ask me later about a guy named Tim Porter. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, he was Lisa MacLeod's chief of staff. So when we launched our next campaign, Autism Doesn't End at Ford, and yes, we were building on our hashtags deliberately as we go, the cool thing was our community sprang into action with absolutely lightning speed because they had just done this 3 years ago. They still had the signs in their garages. And so harnessing those skills, they sprung into action at an absolutely astonishing pace. Protests at MPP offices were organized without any assistance from our leadership team because they knew what to do. By the end of the week, they were organizing petitions, making phone calls, asking for meetings with their MPPs, and doing it all in a systematic fashion. Now, I don't know if you've seen this before. You can get them from the Conservative caucus offices, but it's a poster of all of the Conservative MPPs. And my daughter, who really likes stickers, had a lot of fun putting stickers on their faces, and yes, on Doug Ford's nose, every time we had either a protest or a meeting in an individual riding. But the thing that we found, and you may find this surprising, is that we had a lot of allies in the back benches. They were terrified of speaking up, but we leveraged them with all of our might. And then we did this, the largest autism protest in Ontario's history. Parents, grandparents, other family members, clinicians gathered together in sub-zero weather to raise their voices in opposition to the program. And it was effective. A few weeks later, McLeod walked back on some of the most controversial aspects of the program, and we knew we had her on the defensive. We kept the pressure up locally, and by July, the unthinkable happened. She was demoted in cabinet and replaced by Todd Smith. Bye-bye, Lisa. Thanks for playing. Smith, in turn, widened the mandate of the Autism Advisory Panel that I just served on, and I can't tell you the significance of that. Our recommendations, if implemented, would mean a complete end to McLeod's childhood budget system and a return to actual needs-based therapy without age cutoffs and with new supports for families, including crisis funding and mental health. So, what did we do that worked? I'm running down my time, but I'll try to finish quickly. The first key to success for us was really that we play an outside game and an inside game. So we protest like nobody's business, but our political skills mean that we go in and we brief premiers and cabinet ministers and MPPs and do what you guys were talking about, letting them know about the disconnect between the talking points that they're hearing and what's actually happening on the ground, and hearing it from their constituents and reminding them that we vote. The second thing is you gotta be nerdy. You gotta do research. We do lots of surveys, we collect data, we write briefing notes, we hold press conferences, and you gotta be able to do that. You gotta have your talking points ready. The other thing that we do is we understand the importance of solidarity, and because we really are all in this together. That's me with Sam, that's Smokey Thomas at our protest, that's me with Laura Spencer-Walton, the head of the CUPE union that represents education assistants. We have to stand together in this, and I want to assure you that in the fight that you have coming, our members understand solidarity. Our families will be with you if needed on the picket line, and they'll be bringing you coffee and Timbits. So as much as I have shifted on the political spectrum, I still recognize that it's really important to build relationships all across the political spectrum. You have to be able to talk to members of all parties, and sometimes that means taking your message and crafting it a little bit different. I know how to wrap a message up in a blue bow when I'm talking to Conservatives and an orange bow when I'm talking to New Democrats, and that's really important. The other thing is leveraging this is going to sound weird, leveraging the negative impact of social media. It is astonishing to me how much MPPs hate negative attacks on social media. And I kind of feel about it the way I feel about negative political advertising. I hate it, but it works. And talk to me later about some of the really fragile MPPs that we got to. Grown-ass men, anyway. Intersectionality, we talked about this earlier. It absolutely matters. Take a look at the sign in this picture. The girl that it's holding it says, my mom is a teacher. My brother has autism. I am a student. I fight for all of us. That's the whole thing. That's everything. I have nothing to add. And last but not least, be relentless. That's our theme song. Be everywhere, and don't stop. I mean, yes, stop, take breaks and rest. Remember what geese do, right? The one with the most energy goes at the front. The one that needs a break moves back, and you keep taking turns. And somewhere in the midst of all of your activism, please remember to have fun. Because as somebody really wise said to me a long time ago in politics, when it stops being fun, it's time to get out. So I hope you have fun. I know you're going to win this fight. We're going to be right there with you. And once again, thanks for having me.